Hello everyone, Sableye here and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing the best 5 cores in the early Regulation D metagame, and we're just going to jump right into things, guys. We're going to start off with this new balance core of Rillaboom, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, and Heatran, and it's just a very solid Fire Water Grass core, guys. If you've played any of Regulation D at all, I'm sure you've seen D3. You may have even used D3 together. And it's just balance, and the best thing about balance is like it's going to be good. These three are never really necessarily going to be bad. As far as we develop into the format, these 3 Pokemon are going to be seen. They're going to probably be seen together more often than not, and it's just simply put. So if you're looking to play balance, these are good 3 Pokemon to start with. If you're looking to counter balance, you can probably look at trying to counter these 3 Pokemon in general, and you're going to be off to a good start. So what really makes this core go, at least in my opinion, like, yeah, Fire Water Grass core has been around for years. You know, the Fake Out plus Urshifu, really good, really limits positioning. But what I think really is the drive home of this core is 1, Heatran being able to Terra, and 2, Urshifu allowing you to have positioning and your opponent to lose positioning. Or not the ability to gain positioning. Normally against balance, right? And like the balance mirrors, what likes to happen is like you can protect, pivot out your other side with a safe switch in, and then you start and then that just kind of becomes in and out, in a pivot. But with Urshifu being on this core, it allows balance to be more aggressive and eliminates the ability for your opponent to start doing that. Now, obviously, like, chances are with Urshifu being like 60% usage right now, your opponent is probably going to have one too. However, what makes this so good is that you have Rillaboom. It doesn't necessarily need to protect. You're normally going to see Assault Vest here, right? Grassy Surge is still really good. So you wall out the Urshifu there, or at least force it into close combat into you. And then you have Heatran, and your Heatran nowadays is just Terra Grass because it's the most logical. It is by far the most logical Terra for it. You start getting around Amoonguss stuff. You resist the Urshifu Rapid Strikes, right? You force them to close combat. It still only does about 50 to you, depending on how bulky you are as well. And then what I like to see this core do is generally slap on a Flutter Mane. And I'm gonna say this 90% of the time in this video is just slap on a Flutter Mane. It is just such a good Pokemon. It is a fast threat. It does so much damage immediately. And it just got better. And now I don't want to say it got better because, like, oh, Urshifu's everywhere and you beat Urshifu, and you do. It's true. You do just beat the Urshifu. It just feels still good, you know. Urshifu is now the new highest usage Mon, and now you still have your old highest usage Mon being just as good and beating it, right? Unless they have some sort of speed control or some Steel Terra or Poison Terra on the Urshifu, which is kind of cool. I have seen a few of those, but like, generally speaking, this is a solid core of 4, guys. It's just balance, and being able to Fake Out and Surging Strikes through Protect. Like, I have a free Fake Out. If you don't want to protect because you're scared of Urshifu, thank you for the free Fake Out. Or if you do protect and I don't care about your other slot, well, I'm gonna have a safe double up into that slot, and I can just start taking names, really. Right? It just is so good. And then you have the fallback of like Grass Heatran after you deal with things from their end. And Grass Heatran is a Mon that can win games if you remove the only threat to it, right? Even the Heatran regularly is amazing if you remove the ground type. You don't even need the Terra, right? You remove the ground type or the water type with your Urshifu or Rillaboom respectively, and all of a sudden Heatran doesn't even need to use that Terra anymore, right? And I think it's just a really strong core in general, and the synergy between these 4 is really nice. Now, what I like to do, or what I did when I was playing this, is Amoonguss got a little bit annoying, because unless I had Heatran on the field, I couldn't really hit it, or I really couldn't ignore it. So what I actually did is I went Terra Grass on my Urshifu. I don't know how common that's going to be. I don't know if it's amazing. It was fun at the beginning of the format when everybody was like, oh, Rocky Helmet Amoonguss is my best answer to Urshifu, right? So I still think this has a place in balance because it just lets you ignore Amoonguss for a little bit, right? You ignore the Amoonguss and you start taking out the partner. And if your opponent's only answer to Urshifu is to redirect it into a Rocky Helmet, well, it's just gone now. It just doesn't matter, right? Like, yeah, if I hit the Amoonguss, I'm still getting Rocky Helmeted, but just ignore the Amoonguss at this point if I get the Terra off, right? So it just gives you that extra layer of pressure, especially if they're trying to play the slow game with the Amoonguss versus the Urshifu. And what I like to do here is the Fluttermane was rough. I'm not going to build out all these cores, but the Fluttermane is rough because what really wrecks this now is speed control, right? Without Rillaboom having Grassy Glide, what wants to wreck this core is speed control. And the speed control, I opted for with Thundurus. It matches up really, really nicely. It gives me Prankster abilities. It gives me Taunt. It gives me Scary Face. You can opt for Thunder Wave. I liked Scary Face because what I could do is I could lead like Thundurus Fluttermane and just absolutely decimate things. I also had the option of turn 1 into a Trick Room core of Scary Facing my own Pokemon twice. Like if they went with like the Cresselia Ursaluna stuff, which spoiler alert, that's the next core we're going to talk about. But I could turn 1, I'd be like, okay, well, they're going to like pivot themselves into their Ursaluna and Trick Room. I'm like, okay, they're Mental Herb, so I can't taunt the Crest. I'm just going to Scary Face myself, give them Trick Room, Scary Face myself again. I'm slower than the Ursaluna. Going to take out the Ursaluna now before it can really do anything. Obviously, that's a very specific scenario that I don't think is going to matter. But more so just Scary Facing Regielekis that were common at the time, which have seemingly fallen off, but still very good. Right? Just allows Fluttermane to go before the Alecki, before Alecki can do damage to your Heatran, before Alecki can do damage to your Urshifu, right? Like, you could even Scary Face the Alecki, then go Urshifu and just kill it. Like, there was so many options with Scary Face, felt better than Thunder Wave, where you can't miss as well, you can hit the ground types. Just a lot of options where Scary Face felt better, but Thunder Wave is more than fine, and you probably want to close it out with Taunt, Thunderbolt, maybe Eerie Impulse. There's a few other options as well, like Wild Bolt Storm is cool, but I didn't really want to miss. Because on balance, anytime you want to go for chip damage, you kind of want to make sure you're getting that chip damage. But either way, this is a really solid core. I don't know if Thundurus really belongs on the core, but the main core, like I said, is the Rillaboom Urshifu Heatran. And I'm going to stop rambling about balance now. I play balance way too often. Okay, so like I said, I hinted at core 2 is going to be this Cresselia, Ursaluna, and Fake Out user. I have Iron Hands there for now, just because I think Iron Hands is still a really good mon in the metagame right now. You could easily throw a Rillaboom there, but I do think the key point with this slot is Fake Out. I think having Fake Out in this slot is really, really solid. I think honestly, you're probably throwing an Urshifu on this core, guys. I don't want to be that guy, but you're throwing an Urshifu on this core, and you're probably throwing some sort of redirection. My guess would be Amoonguss. I'll delete the Urshifu for now because the main core is this. But, like, you're probably throwing an Urshifu on here at some point, too. Just because Fake Out plus Urshifu is so... It's so oppressive, you know? It just forces your opponent into so many specific lines that they have to know. And the moment they lose their positioning in the slightest, you can outposition them easily. It just gives you so many opportunities to outposition with the Fake Out plus hitting through Protect. But for right now, we're going to stick with this. Cresselia, by far going to be the best Trick Room setter in this format. It's Levitate. It can't get hit by ground type moves. It's Psychic, which you don't even need to be a Psychic type anymore. The bulk is absolutely ridiculous. You get absolutely crazy support moves. You get stuff like Helping Hand. You get stuff like Icy Wind if you wanted to not go the Trick Room route. You get Lunar Blessing, which I think is something I'm going to highlight. And now the best part about this Cresselia is you get access to Terra. And before, I've said this a few times on stream, and when you had Cresselia, it was... Okay, my opponent has a Cresselia. I'm going to preserve my Dark type. I'm going to keep it in the back. My end game is going to be fine. I'm going to be able to 1v1 it, right? But nowadays, they start running Moonblast or Dazzling Gleam, right? And they can even opt to just Terra out of that. So, like, you really have to not only preserve your pieces now. You don't have to preserve just your pieces to be a Psychic type Cresselia. You have to preserve your pieces to be pretty much any type Cresselia. Obviously, you'll see that with the open sheets. But I think Terra makes Cresselia even better, right? You have support options like Calm Mind as well to start setting up. Obviously, on a core like this, you're very, very obviously going to be clicking Trick Room. But I just think Cresselia is by far the best Trick Room setter. Really, really difficult to take out. You can't taunt it if you decide to go something like Mental Herb. You can decide to get around Amoonguss with a safety goggles. It's just, you have so many options with Cresselia. It's not the old school like Armarouge and Didi where, oh, I'm Follow Me Trick Room, right? Like, you don't even need Follow Me here. Obviously, the Rage Powder is nice in certain instances, but, like, generally speaking, like, you're not going to need the Follow Me to get Trick Room up because Cresselia is just bulky enough to live things. And obviously then Ursaluna is the hype of the format right now, guys. Everybody's like, oh my goodness, Ursaluna is amazing. Now, granted, I just did a tier list video. I said it was kind of, like, very one-dimensional, but I do think that's because, like, its strategy is very... I don't want to say linear, but its strategy is very linear. Does that make sense? Like, You're going to go Guts. You're more than likely going to go Flame Orb. Now, I don't know if this is going to adapt. There are routes where I've seen like random Belly Drum or Ursalunas. Now, you'd really have to commit to supporting a Belly Drum or Ursaluna, which I don't love either. Ursaluna kind of just functions, right? You go Facade, you go Headlong Rush, you go Earthquake, depending on what you choose. Maybe both of them if you don't feel like you need coverage, right? And you just kind of go like that. Now, it's still a really, really good mod. It does incredible amounts of damage with Guts Boosted Facade. You probably one-shot a Moongus. I believe that is the calc. Don't know if you need to Terra Normal for that or what attack stat you need to hit. But the pressure you put on right here is absolutely ridiculous. Okay? Then you can have Lunar Blessing to heal yourself up. You make yourself go after the Ursaluna. So the Ursaluna attacks with the burn. You Lunar Blessing. You heal yourself up. Yeah, you lose the burn, but at the end of the turn, you get the burn back anyway. So next turn, you're just hitting them. Then you're just going back and you're going back at it, right? Like, it's just a really, really strong core. I think there's a lot of room for development with this core because right now, a lot of people are just playing hard Trick Room, right? They're throwing the Ornamorous on here, right? Which honestly works out really, really well. Fairy Ground in Trick Room is disgusting, has disgusting sweep potential, right? Maybe you even throw like a Torkoal, right? But like the problem I find with this is then you're running hard Trick Room. And I haven't loved hard Trick Room whenever I've tested it. There's been formats where hard Trick Room is good. I'm not saying hard Trick Room is bad by any means. I do think it has its merits. It's just with a format like this, with a format with Urshifu where they're guaranteed crits and going faster than you, I can't help but wonder if maybe a little bit of a faster mode and then just having a back-end Cresselia Ursaluna is better. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, you start slapping on, like I said before, Urshifu. Like, you slap on an Urshifu, you slap on a Fluttermane, right? And maybe you slap on some mid-ground plays, like maybe something like a Lando. Like, this is, like, me completely off the top of my head, guys. Like, and I don't know if this is going to be good, right? And then you have some other mid-ground Pokemon. And then maybe even like a support. Like, I don't want to say Tailwind, although Tail Room could be really, really cool. So maybe you do opt for something like Tailwind here. Just that way you have like a fast mode and a little slow mode if you want, right? And it's basically you're saying go ahead and pick one to counter, but you can't really commit to countering one of them because I could always just bring the other mode, right? And I think that may make this core a little bit more scary moving forward if someone can figure out that core, right? Like, and with this fast mode, you're going to be wanting to beat Urshifu because Urshifu is what scares Ursaluna. Maybe you go Terra Water Ursaluna, right? There's a lot of options with this core. I think there's tons of potential. Right now, I don't think it's like super scary, but I do think if figured out correctly and if played properly, Cresselia Ursaluna, probably Fake Out user. I don't know. I'll delete this for now, guys. It's a thought. It's a thought, but I do think Fake Out user we'll cycle back down to this, right? Just back into Fake Out user. This core right here in general, you're going to see it a lot. Don't know how much, but it's going to be around, guys. It's going to be around. Okay, so core number 3 is for you hyper offense lovers out there. I know you guys are out there. I know you're sitting there going, these are all like support cores. I just want to do damage. Here you go. Okay, core 3 is going to be my hyper offense. It's going to be that Chien-Pao. It's going to be Urshifu. It's going to be Dragonite. Now, I don't necessarily know if Dragonite needs to stick around on this core, but I do believe it has a lot of merit as well. Now, by having Urshifu, you'd no longer have necessarily a need for Sacred Sword here. I personally still like Sacred Sword. I know a lot of people have somehow dropped it for a Throat Chop or a different like regular dark move just to cover some like of the ghost types without needing to Sucker Punch. You start pressuring Cresselia as well. Right, I do think Throat Chop has merit. It might have more merit than Sacred Sword, but just getting through defense boost is always really, really nice. But anyways, the core is still similar to Regulation C, right? You go with your Chien-Pao, you go with your Focus Sash, and all you are is a damage enabler, right? You have very good attack pressure as well on your own, right? So not only are you enabling other damage, you're still putting out damage, right? So I'm going to put Sacred Sword here, not that it really matters, but, you know, you're still putting out massive damage. You do a lot of support for your other two. And like, you can't protect in front of it now. And it just makes it 20 times better. Right? Like, Urshifu just does things. I personally did test out Choice Scarf here just to go fast. I don't know if it's a necessity on this core. I don't think you really need it. Right? Especially if you're going to ban Terra Normal your Dragonite, right? Like, if you're going to go Banded Terra Normal, you don't necessarily need to go Choice Scarf here because the double choice item gets you a little bit questionable. Then they start setting up Tailwind. Fluttermane comes in. It's a little bit scary, right? So I do like having Protect on my Urshifu, But Choice Scarf is very valid, right? And you just lead Chien-Pao Urshifu into things and you just start taking things out, you know? Chien-Pao covers the grass types that Urshifu doesn't really want to deal with very well, actually, with an Ice Spinner. And, like, it's just a really... This core of 3 is very aggressive, right? And then something... Oh, wait, these two can't hit something? Well, Bandit E-Speed is probably going to pick up knockouts. It's just incredible amounts of damage, incredibly fast. Not being able to protect on it either because of Urshifu is amazing. Right? Like, I don't know really where you go with this core. You probably want to bulk it up a little bit just to, like, make people bring frailer Pokemon, like, a more aggressive Pokemon. Right? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe you go Fluttermane. I don't know. Like I said before in, like, the first core, I'm just going to suggest Fluttermane on all of these cores because it's such a splashable Pokemon. But, like, something like this is absolutely disgusting. And then, like, throw a Rillaboom here. You know what I mean? So now all of a sudden that first core and this second core have combined, and look at this. Like, this is legitimately, I could see this team winning a tour. Like, I could straight up see this team doing very well at Worlds if the meta doesn't develop much. Obviously the meta is going to develop, but keep this team in mind. This is a very interesting core. I think there's very much still room to explore with teams like this, right? And it's just so much pressure, so fast, that your opponent really just has to get every turn right. And when you're playing balance, and with like I said earlier, balance is going to be here, right? That Rillaboom, Heatran, Urshifu stuff is going to be here. And when you're playing balance, it's really, really bad if you get one turn wrong against something like this. So if you can somehow close this core out correctly, I think this core has a lot of potential. Like I said, I don't think you necessarily need the Dragonite, but it's definitely there as an option if you want it. I do still think it's really, really good on a team like this. But just in generally speaking, Chien-Pao Dragonite is not new. We can still build off cores from Regulation C, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Chien-Pao Dragonite gets a new friend, Urshifu. Could probably go Urshifu Dark as well, but then you're kind of stacking Dark, which isn't as optimal, and the water coverage here is really, really nice as well. So I would say water's better on this core, but water's probably better in general, unless Urshifu Dark fills a specific niche. Because there's just better Dark types than water types, right? So chances are you're going to rather have the water typing than the Dark typing. But other than that, the core is really, really good. Urshifu adds a really nice addition. Like, normally you can protect the slot and, you know, maybe chip down to Chien-Pao or something. You can't protect anymore. It's just the ability. Like, I was talking how good it was on balance. Now it's even better on hyper offense because, like, you just can't protect that. You can't protect it out to maybe stall out if this team, like, adds Tailwind. You can't protect the turn to stall out the Tailwind. Speaking of Tailwind, we're going to get into that in a second. But it's just a really, really solid core. Urshifu just adds so many good things to the Chien-Pao Dragonite core and benefits off the Chien-Pao. I don't want to say match made in heaven, but, like, you're going to see this around, guys, okay? Even if you drop the Dragonite, like, and just turn this into a more balancey thing rather than Dragonite, the core is really, really good. You're going to see it, long story short. As I said before, like I said, Tailwind, Ryan, Tailwind. Well, here it is, okay? Tailwind, as I said before, it's going to be here. Now, this is Torn Urshifu. It's just really, really strong. You know, you make your Urshifu go fast and your opponent can't protect. You know, you run Covert Cloak over here. And honestly, you probably go Ghost just so you don't lose to the Bandit E-Speeds from... Where's Ghost? There. So you don't lose to the Bandit E-Speeds from the Dragonite stuff, right? And it's almost guaranteed Tailwind because they can no longer fake you out, right? There's very limited things that are going to stop you from getting a Tailwind up here outside of maybe losing a Speed Tie to another Torn and getting taunted, right? You can build bulky, but I probably recommend max speed as well. You're going to run Bleak Wind Storm as well because it's 100% accurate in your rain. So not only are you Rain Dance boosting your Urshifu, you're Rain Dance boosting your Bleak Wind Storm on a future turn as well. That way you're not missing. And it's just a really solid core. These two alone are phenomenal. And now you probably want to make this, I don't want to say hyper offensy, because you already have your hyper offense mode, right? So you can definitely just support this well, right? Like, honestly, like, you could go bulky with Amoonguss. I don't know how great Amoonguss is here. I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't played much of this core, but I have seen it around. I've seen some cores, some of this run Alecki as well, just to help deal with opposing Urshifu, which isn't really the greatest matchup for you. I mean, it's okay. It's not like you're losing to it, but, like, you have tons of options with this core. You can probably slot this anywhere. I don't necessarily want to develop this too much because, once again, there's so much room to play once you have the Tailwind option, right? You have the Tailwind, the Urshifu. You could probably just close this out with the balance core that I was talking about earlier as well. Like, what if you just went balance to close this out? Like, I know it seems like kind of dumb that I keep suggesting just close it out with balance, but like, does that just looks good, you know? And maybe you add like a dragon type, you know, like you could get greedy. Like Regidrago has been kind of like one of those off meta picks early on, especially if the teams have been dropping Fluttermane, right? All of a sudden Regidrago starts putting on massive damage in Tailwind, right? You can go something like either Choice Specs or Dragon Fang, right? It's just, you get a lot of damage. Dragon Energy is a really cool move. This Pokemon somehow actually didn't get nerfed. Regieleki got its ability nerfed to 1.3 times. Dragon's Maw, however, is still 1.5 time multiplier. So Dragon Energy at full health is still doing disgusting damage in Tailwind. It's like Tornogre at home, because like you Tailwind Water Spout, no, now I'm going to Tailwind Dragon Energy, right? Obviously, there's answers to this, like Heatran does a really good job at stopping these two, right? And maybe a core like this probably just loses to Heatran. Like a well-played Heatran would suck versus this. But like, in general, like, there's a lot of options with this Tailwind mode, especially because Torn is just such a great Tailwind setter, and Covert Cloak gave it a really, really nice boost. It's just so pressuring because I can't fake it out. And Balance like to always, you know, fake out the Tailwind user and get some damage off and do some things, right? But now I'm forced to fake out the other user, and if I'm bringing my fake out user, which generally speaking has been Rillaboom in this metagame, it's interesting. It doesn't really do a whole lot here. My best answer to this is probably Iron Hands, which I haven't said anything. It hasn't been on a team. It's been on the one Ursaluna Crest team very briefly, but I just said it was a fake out user, right? Like, Iron Hands should creep up in the metagame. We'll talk about that in a completely separate video. But either way, this is a really, really strong core right now. You can pretty much pair it with anything. A lot of the mid-speed balancy stuff really could benefit from Tailwind in this format to outpace some of the hyper offense cores as well. Just really good core. You benefit, you boost your Urshifu, you boost your Torn. It just, all in all, it makes a lot of sense. There's really no reason to like go too much more in depth right here. A lot of room to play with this one. Definitely try it out if you're looking for something very aggressive. Core 5, guys, I'm going to be honest, the format is completely dominated by those first 4 right now. If you look at a team, the chances are the cores, one of those 4 cores is going to be on it, or a makeshift form of it. So this Core 5 is kind of more of a stretch, sort of like an anti-meta pick. I don't know if Pelipper is to play, but I do really want to talk about Basculegion. Because Basculegion is probably one of the few Pokemon, and probably the only water type I would ever choose over Urshifu Water, if I wanted a water type. And my main answer, my main reasoning is because it just beats Urshifu, right? Go ahead and close combat me. Wait, I'm a ghost type. I'm sorry, you can't do that, right? Go ahead and Surging Strikes me. I'm a water type. I'll resist it. I have good HP. I can bulk this thing up really, really nicely. If I opt for Swift Swim, I really don't need speed at all. But I do think the bread and butter here is in adaptability. You could opt for something along the lines of Life Orb as well. Maybe Terra Ghost for like big Last Respects damage, because that's a really cool move as well, right? You get your late game Last Respects. And I think that's something to be said, because adaptability boosted Last Respects with a Life Orb. Maybe you go something like Terra Ghost. I think you probably don't. You probably want maybe a defensive Terra or something along those lines, because I don't think you necessarily need more damage. But let's say if you preserve this right and you play this properly, the end game is your Basculegion, right? And everything else could be gone. But Basculegion then has base 200 base power, adaptability boosted, Life Orb boosted, Last Respects. Like, that is a disgusting move. Not a lot of things resist Ghost. There's really no water types. Really no normal types going around right now. And the only normal type is Ursaluna, which, spoiler alert, I have a Wave Crash. Goodbye, Ursaluna, right? So it just has a lot of potential, right? I don't think you want to run it with Rain, but I think you actually pair this similar to what I did with the Urshifu on the last core, and it's Basculegion Torn. And like, you can actually make this like bulky, right? Maybe this is the one you bring the, how do I put this? This is maybe the one you bring the semi-room mode on, because Basculegion doesn't necessarily need to go fast, right? You can kind of hit like a middling speed tier right here, like maybe like a 107 or a 108. You bring Basculegion Torn, you throw a Cresselia on here, just something else that's really difficult to break. And then, like, I don't necessarily think you need Ursaluna, but something like maybe like a Glass Tier or an Enamorus as the Trick Room mode, and then 2 more middling speed tiers, like maybe like Fluttermane, something along the lines of, like I said, I'll put an Amorous here just for the sake of putting an Amorous here. I guess that's another core I could have in theory talked about, but I don't know how great it is. But anyways, an Amorous is here, and then you have something along the lines of, maybe once again it could still be a Lando, could be a Rillaboom, could be a Fire type, could really be anything here, right? But you have a fast mode, you do a lot of damage, and then you also have the slow mode if you feel like they're gonna have a better Tailwind mode than you are, right? And I think that's something that really needs to be played with, is the tail room mode. Like, you have Tailwind option and a Trick Room mode. I think those teams are gonna be very, very viable moving forward, and this is definitely the start of more of like an anti-meta kind of thing, because Basculegion does a lot of damage. Heatran really doesn't want to touch it. If I tear it out of the grass weakness as well, I can deal with Rillaboom as well. Right, maybe I do want to make it faster, but if I just patch the Rillaboom weakness with a Fire type here and a Torn, right, not as concerned about Rillaboom. Obviously, still got to be maneuvering around it, but you know, it's here. It is here. Okay, it's something to talk about. I think Basculegion is a cool off-meta core. Really haven't considered how to build it. Pelipper is something to consider if you want like immediate rain. I know I had that immediately when I first opened when I first introduced the team, right? But I just don't know if I feel like if you do this, you're going Swift Swim. But I also think adaptability is just better, and because of that, I don't think you need the immediate rain. I think you want the option for rain, and I think Torn does the better job at that. It's just a better Tailwind setter than Pelipper, because you get it off immediately. You can get rain off immediately as well if you so choose. If you don't need Tailwind, you can still just set rain that turn, right? It just feels a little more consistent this way. It's more of an anti-meta core, but like I said, guys, those first 4 cores are everywhere right now. If you're looking at results from any of the recent tournaments, those cores are everywhere. Those are the cores that you're gonna have to counter, right? So this is more of an off-meta take as the 5th core, but I wanted to get that 5th core out there. I do think it's interesting to talk about the Basculegion. But with that, guys, thank you all so much for watching. If you do enjoy the video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and I do appreciate that, and I will catch you all in a future video.